According to you, what is a real man, or what should he be?
You should want the best for people, for you, for your family, and for the community. Courage is a good thing. Courage in the face of life's difficulties. You know, one of the things I suggest to the people who are watching my videos, for example, is that a good ambition is to be the most reliable person at your father's funeral. The advice, maybe you could call it leadership advice, from the Sermon on the Mount is to keep your eye on the prize, right? So the first injunction is to love God with all your heart and all your soul. And so that's to lift your eyes up above the horizon and to focus on some transcendent goal, right? To maintain a relationship with what you regard as of the highest value or divine. And so that's the first thing, is to set your sights properly. And then the next thing is to concentrate on the day, right? Because the troubles of the day are sufficient. But what that does is gives you it orients you in two ways. It gives you real direction, but it also allows you to concentrate on what's right in front of you and perhaps to make the course corrections that are necessary, that are associated with moment-to-moment transformation. And it's interesting that that particular sermon uses the day as the proper unit of measure, right? It's well, I know where I'm going, but now I have to figure out how I'm going to implement that in the here and now and make whatever course corrections are necessary. Women know what they have to do. Men have to figure out what they have to do. And if they have nothing worth living for, then they stay Peter Pan. And why the hell not? Because the alternative to valued responsibility is impulsive, low-class pleasure. And you saw that in the Pinocchio story, right? That's Pleasure Island. It's like, well, why lift a load if there's nothing in it for you? That's another thing that we're doing to men that's a very bad idea. And to boys. It's like, you're pathological and oppressive. It's like, fine then, why the hell am I going to play? If that's the situation, if I get no credit for bearing responsibility, you can bloody well be sure I'm not going to bear any. But then, you know, your life is useless and meaningless, and you're full of self-contempt and nihilism, and that's not good. And so that's why that's what I think's going on at a deeper level with regards to men needing this direction. A man has to decide that he's going to do something. He has to decide that. Women end up bearing the primary responsibility for extraordinarily dependent infants, and so they tend to look for men who can provide the resources to balance that out to some degree. So they're looking at productivity and generosity, let's say, as markers for a suitable mate. Now that's not the only thing, there's other elements that go into mate choice, but those are two very important things. And those are relevant and important. And so, well, what do you want to do? Well, you want to encourage young men to what? To grow the hell up, right? To take on responsibility. And so one of the things I talked to these young guys today about was where they'd found the meaning in their life. And they all said, well, it was a consequence of taking on more responsibility. The two young boxers, they were only 18. You know, one of them really talked about the fact that he had disciplined himself and that he wanted to go to college. He ended up wanting to go to college, and it was a boxing college, and there's like only 4 of them in the country, and he hadn't been doing so well academically, but he wanted to go to the damn boxing college because he had a talent and it was being encouraged by some older guys around him. And, you know, he was having some attention paid to him, so he buckled the hell down and did the best he'd ever done academically and got into the college. It's like, good work, man. Way to be. What would you call by the sophisticated integration of the emotions? It's like you're gonna be facing hard things, man, in your life. It's like you're gonna break down. And I mean, look, I'm saying this as a very emotional male, right? Like my proclivity to tears has been overwhelming all my life. And so
sometimes in your talks.
Yes. And so I'm saying that, knowing that about myself. What's wrong with the ability to endure? Like lots of times endurance is what you have. When things are really going badly, and they will, you have the ability to put one goddamn foot in front of the other. And maybe you're even manifesting negative emotion about it, but that doesn't mean you stop. You don't stop. And that's not just a cardinal element of masculinity, although it is in the symbolic sense. It's a cardinal aspect of the development of a forthright character. You want your children to be able to endure We're so naive. It's like, no, you want them to be happy. It's like, yeah, fine, but what about when they're not happy? What about when they have a sick child? What about when someone's dying? You know, like, what? Well, they should be happy. It's like, God, it's thin gruel. It's a leaky boat. And so you train stalwart individuals to endure. Now, can that go too far? Well, obviously, you know, I mean, every culture can degenerate into cruel tyranny, you know, and they can engage in sadistic rituals that have this justification to train endurance. But what's wrong with endurance? And to inhibit emotion it's not to inhibit emotion precisely, it's to put things in their proper place. When you have people relying on you, including yourself, but when you have people relying on you, you don't get to quit. People die if you quit. They suffer if you quit. It's like,
if you're a parent, especially.
Yes, of course. And you know, and this is why I like the Christian metaphor, at least in part. It's like, pick up your bloody cross and walk up the hill. You know, and of course there's suffering and catastrophe associated with that. It doesn't mean that men should pretend that they don't have emotions, but you know, that's so obvious that it hardly needs to be discussed. And you're gonna have to be tough, not safe. Give up safe. What the hell? Safe, life, 100% fatal. There's no safety. The best you can do is to confront that courageously and to pursue something that's deeply meaningful, right? That's rule 7. Do what is meaningful and not what is expedient. You look for meaning in your life. You find that through responsibility. You put that up against the tragedy and the malevolence of existence, right? You grow up responsible and respectable and awake and wise, and you take your place in the world and you act as a cornerstone for your damn civilization. And that's what you encourage. And the lack of that's the crisis of masculinity. You need an adventure, and the greater the better. And so it's back to the high seas, gentlemen. You know, out on the rolling waves where there are new continents to conquer and new things to overcome. And if you think that all the frontiers are gone, then you're not looking, because there's frontiers everywhere, and that's where you should be, right? Working diligently to expand the domain of habitable order into the chaos of potential. And that'll force you to discover who you are and to bring that into the world. And that's the role of men in the 21st century, and there's nothing about that that's anything but good for anyone. I mean, one of the things that I detest about the current collectivist ideology and the insistence that what we live in is a patriarchal tyranny is that it associates the activity of stalwart men with nothing but tyranny and power. And I think that that's dreadful beyond imagining, because it conflates bravery and courage and competence and the desire to adopt responsibility and the ability to be generous with nothing but power. And it gives men, especially young men, an excuse to be useless so that they'll be harmless, so that they won't be destructive. And none of that's helpful. It's like you're a dangerous creature, and that's a good thing. And you should harness that and discipline it towards some impossible goal, one you can barely lift, and see if you can manage to struggle uphill with it. And then things will straighten themselves out. And then we won't have to ask, well, what's the role of men in the 21st century? There are terrible problems that need to be solved. Solve them. It's within our power to solve them. It's within your power to solve the problems that present themselves to you as your problems. Solve them. That's the right solution. And there's nothing in that isn't good. And there's nothing in it that isn't like that call to adventure that can get you up in the morning when it's a difficult morning, you know, when things have collapsed around you for one reason or another. You need a purpose for moving forward, and it has to be the sort of purpose that justifies the suffering. So that's that.